Is it okay to complain to God? But God, I mean, to ask God why he does certain things and how come he lets this happen and where are other people in the process? Why are you the only one that has to deal with the issue and why can't they have the same problems you're having? Is it okay to complain to God? Well, we're going to discover today that Habakkuk, the prophet, had no problem complaining to God. And unlike the other prophets of the southern kingdom, Habakkuk didn't spend his time prophesying about the bad things that are going to happen to the nation. He actually spent time having a conversation with Yahweh and giving his complaints directly to God. And he wrote this oracle, Habakkuk 1, 2, and 3, and he places these complaints before God. And I find it intriguing, the process of how he goes from complaining to restoration. Good morning, I'm Pastor Rini. Welcome to 747 Morning Inspiration. So glad you joined us today as we go through the Bible in a year. And as always, remember to hit the like button, share this with a friend so that other people are joining us as we go through the Word of God. Let me begin in chapter 1 of Habakkuk. And this is how Habakkuk starts his conversation. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear? Or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see iniquity, and why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes perverted. So the first thing he does is say, God, why do you allow my nation to operate in sin? Now, this is funny that we are surprised when we see injustice in the world. We always act so surprised by it. I don't know why. Ever since evil entered the world through the sin nature of man, we have dealt with this. And until the return of Jesus, we will continue to deal with this. But Habakkuk is kind of blaming God at this moment because he says, God, you are allowing this to happen. And God actually answers him. And thankfully, the prophet writes down God's response. And he says in verse 5, look among the nations and see, wonder and be astounded. For I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if I told. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, which is also the Babylonians, same thing, that bitter and hasty nation who march to the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. So God said, oh no, I'm doing something about it. You may not like it, but I'm raising up the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, to come in, and they're going to basically conquer the southern kingdom, bring God's people captive so they can learn a lesson about what it means to disobey the living God. And so then, after he answers him, Habakkuk gives him a second complaint. Again, Habakkuk is a very honest prophet, and he's speaking to God, and he's writing down his conversation so we could all learn from what happens with him and presenting his complaints to God. So he tells God, why is this happening? God says, hey, I'm sending the Babylonians to do my will. And then there comes a second complaint, where Habakkuk is asking God why he would dare use evil Babylonians to do his will. He says, verse 12, are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, O Holy One? Shall we not die, O Lord? You have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. And you are of purer eyes than to see evil, and cannot look at wrong. Why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up men more righteous than he? So he's basically saying to God, all right, I don't get this. How can you, God, the most purest being in the universe, you represent pure love, pure goodness, pure grace, pure mercy? How can a loving, pure, undefiled God work with a sinful people. That's pretty incredible. And not only does he say that, he kind of makes this statement. It's a bit arrogant. And he says, Habakkuk says in chapter 2, I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out and see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. He literally says, all right, I'm going to be like the watchman on the wall. I'm going to stand here, God, until you give me an answer. Why is evil happening? And then why would you use an evil nation to discipline your people? And I'm going to stand here on this tower, not going to go anywhere until you give me an answer. Wow, I mean, that's an impressive and scary place to be. And God actually answers him. And he says to him, and the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. He says, you want an answer? I will give you an answer, but you need to write it down so other people can learn from what I'm saying to you. All right, so he does. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by faith. Moreover, wine is a traitor, an arrogant man who is never at rest. Greed is as wide as Sheol. Like death, he has never enough. He gathereth for himself all nations and collects as his own all peoples. He says the answer is righteous people live by faith, not by what they see other people doing, not by how much money they have in the bank, not by how many friends they have. They live by faith in God, and anybody else is doomed for disaster. And then God says the woe to the Chaldeans. In other words, now I'm going to accuse the Babylonians. They're going to get it, and they're going to get it big. And he lists why. And I won't read them all, but he has all these woes. And the woes are basically that they charge obscene profits on interest loans to those that are poor so they could never repay. And they became rich on taking advantage of the poor. They killed innocent people. They have no place to hide. Woe to them and their big houses and their lofty hills. No matter how big their castle and how many servants they have, they're not safe from my wrath. Woe to them because they're drunkards. They practice immoral behavior. Woe to them because they hand make and craft idols that are these false gods, and they worship them, and they cover them with gold and silver, and they make them special. Oh, he says, but the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silent before him. So he makes it clear that to Habakkuk, they will not get away with this. Yes, I did use them to discipline my children for only a season, and then they will be held accountable for whether they serve me or whether they reject me. And as we know, even though the Babylonians conquered the Israelites and exiled them, they too were conquered and removed from power. But in all of it, because Habakkuk had the guts to ask God the hard questions, to stand on a wall and to wait for God's response, God responded to him. It's something that we can learn. We can learn that God is not offended by our hard questions. So when we give our complaints to the Lord, why, God, did this happen to me? How come other people have it better than me? Where are you in the midst of this crisis? And why do they get to be like that and I don't? And how come they get to have blessings and I don't? God is totally fine with the honest conversations and questions of his saints. But he requires you to listen for his response. And that's the difference. Habakkuk complained and then he shut up and he listened for God's response. Are you listening today? Are we just complaining, or are we listening? And when Habakkuk listened to the heart of God, and he realized God indeed was just, and he was merciful, that he says these words in chapter 3. O Lord, I have heard the report of you and your work, O Lord, do I fear. And he then goes on in chapter 3 to explain and to revisit all the things that God had done for them. You went out for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. You trampled the sea with your horses, surging the mighty waters. I hear and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters my bones. My legs tremble beneath me, yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon the people who invade us. He's at peace with God. He knows that God has ordained the Babylonians to come take them captive, but then there will be rejoicing when they're released and they were restored to serve the one true God. And he makes this final proclamation that we could learn from it today, and he turns his complaints into confidence. And this is how the chapter ends. He says this starting in verse 17. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock will be cut off from the fold, and there will be no herds in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. If I got nothing, I eat nothing, I have nothing, I will still rejoice in the mercies of the living God. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. I am God's child. I have eternal life. I am protected in his arms. No matter what I lose, I still have God. Verse 18, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. So what does that tell us today? It's okay to be concerned about your life and the problems and the troubles you face. But when you give them to God, listen, and he will lift you up, and he will comfort you, and he will give you peace. Well, I hope you liked today's message. If so, hit the like button right down there. Please hit the like button, share this with a friend, and I will see you tomorrow morning at 7:47. Very good. I love you all, and I'll see you soon.